Wellington Mara always said, once a giant, always a giant. For me, it's only a giant.
Giants fans, welcome back to another episode of Only a Giant. I'm your host, Michael Doherty. Thank you so much for joining me again. And if you could, obviously, please like and subscribe. We're here to talk about the 14-3 win preseason week 1 against the Detroit Lions. A game that you kind of figure you're probably not going to see anything crazy in this game, and you really didn't for the most part. But what you wanted to see was, competing. Offensive line holding up, defensive line holding up, receivers making some plays, quarterbacks making some plays. Now, it ended up being kind of wet. Obviously, it was a very rainy game. I don't know if that really changed the game plan at all. But that being said, 14-3, New York Giants win. Not a huge deal to get the win in the grand scheme of things, but I always like to get a win. A win always feels better than a loss. There's no question about that. Eric Gray, 2 touchdown runs. Other than that, not a lot of offense, a little bit of passing here and there. Really, Tyree Jackson probably had the most receiving yards, if I had to guess. Running the ball was probably the staple of this game, and really something I didn't expect to see. Utter dominance, I guess, if you will, with the running game, but something that happened, which was cool to see. Drew Lock didn't look great, and that was probably, for me, one of the more disappointing things. I wanted to see him throw the ball around a little bit. He seemed very hesitant, very slow, making his reads. Just overall not really thrilled with what I saw. What else, guys? Obviously, just physical game. Giants seem to really out-physical the Detroit Lions, which you don't see many teams doing that. I think one of the Detroit Lions coaches even said our defensive line really kicked the crap out of the offense of the Detroit Lions. Now, a couple things you got to throw out there to kind of keep in mind here. Quarterback play for the Detroit Lions was bad. Hendon Hooker's best plays running the ball, and he got concussed because of it. Just quarterback play in general really looked bad. I think if Goff ever goes down, they're going to be in kind of a sticky situation there with their quarterback too. I don't know if Sudfeld is really the answer there. I don't think he is, but I don't know who else is out there to look at either. So something to consider there, just to kind of keep in mind. Maybe temper expectations a little bit, or don't get too high or don't get too low. But overall, a good win. Seemed like the offensive line held up pretty well, other than maybe some pass protection issues. Defensive line seemed to hold up well. Linebackers seemed to be making plays all over the field. Cornerbacks seemed quite good in coverage. Safeties making plays. I mean, all around, really got to be pretty happy with what you saw from the New York Giants. Biggest play of the game, obviously, I would probably say, is that Eric Gray long touchdown run. Kind of a delayed handoff, puts his foot in the ground, goes, and then kind of gives a little headsy juke, like a foot stab. I don't know what you want to call it exactly. And then just turns on the burners and goes for the touchdown. The other big play, really two, Deontay Johnson made a great play where he just strung the ball, the runner out, and just gave him a good pop for a tackle for loss. And then the Trey Herndon interception was a really fun play. Obviously, you don't want to have him fumbling the ball afterward, trying to make a long return. It was cool to see, though, just overall a little bit of execution in the secondary there to make a play. But you need to hold on to the ball and kind of keep things in front of you, I guess, if you will. So what else, guys? Obviously week one, some key takeaways. I think Drew Lock did not look good. And maybe how we'll do this is we'll look at the position groups that I mentioned in the last episode as far as stuff that I would be looking at. So I guess we'll start off right away with a quarterback room. Drew Lock didn't look great. Now, does that mean that's what he's going to be? I don't think so. I think, maybe he's still learning the system a little bit. Processing maybe was a little bit slow last night. Obviously, he got hurt, and news that we're hearing out of Brian Dable today is that he might miss some time, so he may need to get a backup quarterback. Don't really love to see that. He needs the time, he needs the work. This is a perfect opportunity for him to get that work, and that may get taken from him. So, we'll see what happens there. Tommy DeVito, I think, for the most part, played really well. You didn't like to see that kind of third and short slide that he had that got us to a fourth down, but he did pick it up on the QB sneak, and he acknowledged that after the game that he needs to make sure he gets past the sticks on that. And, good thing that happened in preseason, not in a regular season game or something of that nature. He looked poised, delivered the ball well, I thought, on a lot of occasions. I think maybe once right early he kind of got sacked and kind of held on to the ball a little bit too long, and I think he even acknowledged that once again. That was something where he had to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker on that. Overall, though, poised, seemed to hit some of the tight ends a little bit. I had a pass, I believe, to Allen Robinson that I wish Allen Robinson would have kept running, with press coverage that he was in, that he was being covered. I'm not sure, though. I'm not sure if I don't remember if that was honestly DeVito or if that was Drew Lock, but I believe it was DeVito. Other positions, obviously, we talked about the running back position. That was a big key where I kind of said, I don't know if Eric Gray is even going to have a chance to stick in this roster, and he showed up. Had a couple good catches, a couple good runs. You look at his runs, really, though, I think 48 of the yards that he had came from one run. I think the three other runs that he got 4 yards on. So he made the most of the opportunities that he had, and you can't really complain about that. And I think he definitely deserves, those running back 2 reps, or at least split reps with Tyrone Tracy. But I think Tyrone Tracy looked better. He made the most of all of his carries. It seemed like every carry he was making a guy miss and kind of doing what he could. He looked very elusive, very powerful. One play, he kind of got hit a little bit in the backfield and then kept going and was able to make get some positive yards out of it. I really like that. Wide receiver room. Not much happened. Malik Neighbors played, but no targets. At one spot, I think he may have been open a little bit, but there was a safety coming over the top. He could have gotten the whole shot and, at least given him a chance, but Drew Lock was a little slow in getting the ball out and ended up throwing the ball away, I believe. Other than that, no receivers made any plays. Allen Robinson, I think, had a catch. There was a couple other little catches here and there. Isaiah Hodgins jumped on a loose ball that ended up being incomplete. You like to see the hustle and the effort on that. But really nobody in the wide receiver room stuck out. Even with kick returning or punt returning, I think Gunnar looked fine. Isaiah McKenzie maybe kind of fumbled the ball a little bit, but he picked it right up. It looked pretty natural. I don't think either of them really separated themselves from anybody else. Nothing really stood out in the wide receiver room that would make someone make the roster over somebody else. So it's still a TBA on that, or TBD, I should say. Offensive line, Jake Kubas, I think, played pretty well. Had a couple of misses here and there, but overall held together well. Who was the other one? Jalen Mayfield, I think, played pretty well in the offensive line, both guards. Josh Azudu struggled, which you hate to see it. It's still very confusing as to what they're really doing with him. Do they actually view him as a tackle? Do they view him as a guard? Is he just not long for this team? You hate to waste a third-round pick there, but very confusing as to what's happening with Josh Azudu. But he did not look great. Maybe in the run game he was decent. I'm not sure. Seemed like most of the runs were happening behind the guards. Obviously, he was in the play that I believe that got Drew Lock hurt. So I didn't really love a lot that I saw from Josh Azudu. We'll see. What other people say on that. I could be wrong on that, but didn't like what I saw really. Defensive line, everyone kind of seemed like they're making plays, getting push. No one really jumped out. I think Jordan Riley had a couple good plays. Timmy Horn had a few. Casey Rogers. No one really jumped out though. I think just in general, the whole defensive line looked like they were flying around, going at the ball carriers, trying to get pressure. Overall, very, very physical. I just don't think anyone necessarily separated themselves from somebody else. And another thing that I could be wrong, we'll have to go back, watch tape, see what PFF thinks, if anybody stuck out. Although I don't always completely buy what PFF says, I guess, if you will. You take it with a grain of salt, kind of. Sometimes it seems to translate, and other times it doesn't. So we'll see. The other position that I had talked about was the safety position, and I was really excited to see Tyler Nubin. Looked like he was flying around, looked like he had good communication, put a lineman on his ass, and then made the tackle. Just seemed like he was kind of flying all over the place. I liked what I saw from him. I think it's only a matter of time before he's in the starting lineup over Dane Belton. Now, that doesn't mean that Dane Belton may not play. I think we'll do a lot of 3 safety sets. Andrew Phillips seemed to be flying around as well. Javarius Owens was someone that seemed to be flying all over the place as well. Now, he did get trucked once by Hendon Hooker, but other than that, I think there was a play that he kind of took on a block from a wide receiver, put him on his ass, and then made the tackle afterward, which I really like to see. So that was kind of the battles that I had talked about, or I guess the position groups I was really kind of focusing on. And a lot of good. Wide receiver, I think still TBD. Didn't like a lot that I saw, but didn't really see much. Didn't really get targeted much. Kind of a rainy day too. Maybe footing was a little slippery. Who knows? I guess next we'll talk about just some bubble players that maybe made a case for themselves as far as potentially sticking on this team and having an impact, or at least making the 53. And that is kind of something I'm starting to kind of put together a little bit as far as who I think may have a chance to stick on the 53 and who may not, who may have a chance at the practice squad, stuff of that nature. And the first one I'll mention is Tommy DeVito. Obviously, it's tough to keep 3 quarterbacks on this roster, although it's probably something you consider with the injury history of Daniel Jones. But I think tonight, with the injury to Drew Lock and just the overall health issues with Daniel Jones, I almost think that tonight made it kind of like a lock that Tommy DeVito is going to make this team. He looked good. He looked poised. He looked like somebody that could be a backup quarterback on this team. That doesn't mean that Drew Lock isn't going to be here. He's making $5 million guaranteed. You got to assume he's going to make the roster regardless at this point. But you got to like what you see from Tommy DeVito, and I think he made a really strong case to be on this team. Who's next? Jake Kubas, guard, somebody that was undrafted. I think he played a pretty good game last night, pretty clean game. Obviously, there were some misses here and there, but overall, I think he showed that he belonged on the field. Offensive line in general, I think, was very cohesive. He was on that first unit that was out there, looked good. Another one was Jalen Mayfield. I do both of them make the team? I don't know. That may be kind of tough, but we'll look at it when we really kind of get down toward the end of the season. Who's making plays? Who's stepping up? I think Jake Kubas, if you did try to sneak him on the practice squad, I think there's probably a good chance that you can do that. That's something that I don't think would be an issue, but we'll see how he plays. You don't really know until you kind of get down there. Running back spot, obviously, Dante Turbo Miller is making a case. I think it's hard to keep 4 running backs, but it's something you have to consider. I do think that's somebody that would probably get snatched up off waivers if we did cut him. But I do think he's making a very strong case, at least so far, to make the team and have a role on this team. Does he get a lot of carries? Is he active on game day? Those things may have to work themselves out. Injuries may play a role in that. Obviously, injuries happen. It's football. So that may be a position that may just have to play itself out a little bit into preseason and then see what happens. If nobody gets hurt, everyone's healthy, I guess we'll see. What happens. But he's somebody that I do certainly want to make the team, if at all possible. Who else, guys? Undrafted free agent Deontay Johnson. Stud of the game, in my mind, even over Eric Gray. Honestly, it just looked like he was flying all over the place, active in the run, active in pass coverage. Just looked like he belonged. What does that say for Micah McFadden? I don't know. I still think Micah McFadden has a role on this team as well. Maybe there's sub packages for each or something. But Deontay Johnson looked really good last night, man. That was probably. Defensively, that was probably the thing I was most encouraged by. His play just seemed like he was flying sideline to sideline, making plays behind the backfield. I think he had a sack, tackles for losses, just very, very active. Another one, kind of in that same role was Javarius Owens. Very active, seemed like he was always around the ball. Made some good tackles, took on a block with a wide receiver, and then kind of put him on his ass, and then made a tackle. You hate to see injuries. Maybe it was a concussion. I don't know for the Detroit Lions wide receiver, but he seemed like he was also flying all over the place. I think he's been practicing mostly with the second team, a little bit with the third team. I think I don't think they'll cut him. I think they kept him on the team last year for a reason, and I think they will this year as well, just based off his play so far. Last one I think I'll mention is kind of a long shot. I think Tyree Jackson, everything I saw from him looked pretty good. Obviously, he had that drop, which you hate to see. You don't like drops. You got to make the best of every opportunity that you have. But I think he played well. Now, keep in mind with him, if you guys remember, he is a converted quarterback. Played quarterback for University of Buffalo, which was kind of a cool story. I think I remember when he was coming out, people were touting him as kind of a high draft pick potentially, and then I don't even know if he got drafted. I don't really remember for sure. Obviously not a quarterback, but he looks good in that kind of that tight end role. Is fast, seems to catch the ball pretty well. He won't make the team. Let's be honest, unless there's a bunch of injuries, and even then, I think they would probably still bring some people in. But somebody that will absolutely be on the practice squad if he doesn't get claimed. I don't think he would get claimed, but somebody that deserves to be on an NFL roster at some point if he keeps developing. But I think he's somebody that will definitely be a practice squad guy this year. So the game itself, I think we'll go over just kind of like some studs and duds, I guess, if you will. And maybe we'll start with the bad first, just to get that out of the way. Drew Lock, man, that wasn't it. It didn't look good. Now, first preseason game, new offense. It does take some time to learn this offense and kind of what Dable expects out of you. Just did not look good. Did not look comfortable. Slow processing. It seemed like getting rid of the ball took forever. Didn't want to get rid of the ball sometimes. Looked like Tommy DeVito against the Jets last year, where they just didn't want him to throw the ball. Just didn't. I was not thrilled with what I saw from Drew Lock, and that's very unfortunate. Now he's hurt. Unfortunately, it sounds like he's going to miss some time, so we'll probably get a heavy dose of Tommy DeVito, and I imagine that we'll hear in the next day or two of signing a quarterback. I know, I think Nathan Rourke maybe signed with Atlanta, so he's probably not coming back. I don't know who you bring back or who you bring at that point. Maybe there's another guy out there that they would be willing to bring in. Obviously, there must be, but I don't know who that is. What else? Azeez Ojulari, guys, probably the biggest disappointment for me, other than Josh Azudu, who we'll get to next. But Azeez Ojulari out there for a lot of snaps, just didn't seem to do anything. Didn't seem to make any plays. Zero pressures. I don't think he had any tackles. Just, man, you're playing against second and third, and even some fourth string players. And you're somebody that we're, thinking you're going to contribute with Kayvon and Brian Burns, and you'd be that potential third pass rusher, and did not see it. Did not see it. Like I just mentioned as well, Josh Azudu, probably somebody that, I really didn't care for what I saw. Didn't seem to... Feet seemed to be there, seemed to be moving fast, but... just seemed to allow pressures. Didn't seem comfortable. Didn't really like what I saw there, unfortunately. Studs. Eric Gray. I could probably honestly just say the running back room in general. Eric Gray, Tyrone Tracy, and Dante Turbo Miller. Every carry they had, it seemed like they made the most of, other than a few Eric Gray runs early when he was in. Tyrone Tracy seemed to make somebody miss every time and always seemed to be moving forward. Obviously, you had the long touchdown with Eric Gray and then a nice catch by Eric Gray as well. A lot of good that you could see from that running back room. Turbo Miller making some cuts outside and just blazing that speed. Deontay Johnson, obviously, we already talked about him, just really seemed to be around the ball every chance he got. And then Trey Hawkins, I think, also actually played quite well at that cornerback 2 position when he was out there. Seemed to hold his own, seemed to be good in coverage, quick on breaks, not really falling for any double moves or anything of that nature. I think he pretty much held things down last night. That's a player I think that we kind of forget about a lot. Obviously last year there was high expectations for him coming out of training camp and thinking he's gonna be a starter, and then really not working out how you wanted it to. But somebody that I think can contribute this year and maybe take some reps at that cornerback 2 position. We'll see, or at least be a guy that can come in and give people a break and stuff of that nature. One other stud that I want to get into is Benton Whitley. Seemed like he was flying all over the field last night. He did have a a face mask penalty, which was kind of ticky-tacky, I would say, at best. A play probably I would have liked to not call, but that does happen. But he seemed to be flying all over the field last night. That edge position behind Boogie Basham, or maybe right there with Boogie Basham, could be a spot that he could come in